The storm had been building all day, rumbling along the horizon like a warning. By nightfall, it broke. Rain slammed the pavement in torrents, dancing across the empty streets of Rose Lake's old district like 1,000 frantic drummers. Street lamps flickered in protest. Shop signs swung wildly. People rushed home, umbrellas turned inside out, hoods drawn tight. But not everyone had somewhere to go. Noah Wynn pulled his coat tighter around him, the soaked fabric clinging to his shoulders as he trudged down Ashford Street. His messenger bag, stuffed with library receipts and a broken umbrella, slapped against his thigh with every step. He was tired, his shift at the public archive had run late again, and the storm hadn't exactly helped. Still, he walked. He always walked. Noah preferred the quiet. The storm, as wild as it was, gave him something to disappear into. But then he heard it. A scream. Sharp, short, and desperate, ripped straight from the shadows ahead. It stopped him cold. At first, he thought it was the wind. Or a television. But then came a second cry, clearer this time. Feminine. Panicked. Noah turned his head and scanned the street. Through the rain, barely visible, he saw movement at the mouth of a narrow side alley between two abandoned storefronts. He didn't hesitate. His feet splashed through puddles as he sprinted toward the sound. As he drew closer, a figure emerged, small, soaked to the skin, stumbling forward. A girl, maybe his age. Her coat was torn, one shoe missing. Mud streaked her face, and her chest heaved like she had been running for miles. Behind her, two figures loomed. Men in dark suits, their silhouettes rigid and focused. They were chasing her. "Hey," Noah shouted, stepping into their path. He planted himself in the alley's entrance like a barricade. "What's going on?" The girl slammed into him, her fingers clenching his coat. "Please," she gasped. "Don't let them take me." The men slowed, their expressions unreadable in the rain. One of them spoke with a polished, almost bored tone. "Step aside. This is a family matter." "She doesn't look like she wants to go with you," Noah replied, his voice tight. The second man took a step forward. "You're interfering in something you don't understand." Noah's eyes met the girl's. She was trembling, her wide eyes pleading. Whatever she was running from, it wasn't just drama, it was danger. He didn't need to understand everything. He just needed to trust what he was seeing. He grabbed her hand. "Run," he said. They took off. The rain battered them as they raced through the side streets, cutting corners and slipping on slick pavement. Noah's mind worked furiously, retracing the shortcuts of his childhood. He guided her down an alley behind an old bakery, through a broken chain-link fence behind a barber shop, and into the back door of a boarded-up bookstore he knew had been vacant for years. They tumbled into the darkness, soaked and breathless. Noah shut the door behind them and jammed a rusted filing cabinet in front of it. The heavy thud of footsteps echoed briefly outside before fading into the storm. Inside, the building smelled of old paper and dust. The walls were lined with sagging shelves, and puddles gathered beneath the cracked roof. Noah turned to the girl. She was curled near the back wall, shivering, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. "You okay?" he asked gently. She nodded, but her teeth chattered. "I'm not hurt. Just cold." Without thinking, he shrugged off his soaked coat and wrapped it around her. She clutched it with shaking hands. "I'm Noah," he said after a beat. "You don't have to tell me anything, but I want to make sure you're safe." She looked up, her face framed by wet hair. "There's a place. Not far. I can get us there." Noah raised an eyebrow. "Us? I mean," she swallowed. "You don't have to come. But I'd feel safer." That was all it took. They waited until the rain lightened a bit, then slipped back into the night. The girl led the way, limping slightly. She moved like someone who had memorized every backstreet. Finally, she stopped in front of a dingy old laundromat with a flickering sign and rusted awning. She produced a small key from her boot and unlocked a side door. The heat inside hit Noah like a punch. She led him through a narrow hallway to a storage room in the back, barely large enough for a cot, a small desk, and an old electric heater. "Temporary," she muttered, closing the door behind them. "It's not much. It's warm," Noah said simply. She turned to him, eyes unsure. "Thank you. For earlier." He waved it off. Anyone would have helped. She gave a small, hollow laugh. "No. They wouldn't have." Noah didn't argue. She found an old towel and tried to dry her hair. Noah, seated near the heater, watched her quietly. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. Then, finally, "Aria." The name danced around in his head, familiar somehow. But he said nothing. "Aria," he repeated softly. You're safe now." She looked at him for a long moment. And for the first time that night, her shoulders dropped just slightly. Her breathing slowed. And she let herself believe it. Morning crept in slowly, slipping through the grime-streaked window of the back room. Dust floated in shafts of light. Outside, the streets of Roselake hissed softly with the last breaths of rain as the storm finally gave way to fragile peace. Inside, the little room smelled of detergent, metal, and faintly, oatmeal. Aria stirred a small pot on an old electric burner, her hands still slightly trembling from the night before. She wore one of Noah's spare flannels, rolled up at the sleeves, and her damp hair was now loosely tied back. The tiny heater hummed steadily nearby, warming her bare feet against the cold concrete floor. Noah stood in the doorway, freshly changed into his usual library khakis and a clean shirt. He rubbed the back of his neck, watching her. "You didn't have to cook," he said. "You let me stay," she replied without looking up. "I wanted to do something." He moved to the cot, brushing off a small stack of books to make space. "I mean, technically I let you sleep on a broken mattress in a laundry storage room with one working heater and 3 cracked tiles. But you're welcome." A small smile flickered across her lips. 5 cracked tiles, she corrected. They ate quietly, seated across from one another on mismatched stools. It wasn't awkward. Just gentle. Unrushed. Noah had always liked quiet mornings. The kind where the world didn't ask anything of you just yet. She finished her bowl, then insisted on cleaning everything. Noah watched, amused, as she scrubbed the edges of the hot plate, organized his tea sachets by type, and stacked his books with frightening precision. "Are you always this meticulous?" he asked. She gave a half laugh, her back to him. "It helps me think." He wanted to ask, "Think about what?" He wanted to say, "You don't have to keep cleaning to earn your right to be here." But he didn't. That was their agreement now, spoken not in words, but in everything they left unsaid. She never explained why she had been running. And he never asked. That afternoon, Noah returned from the archive with 2 paper bags. One carried a set of takeout sandwiches. The other, a stack of novels from the discard shelf, battered, yellowed, and still filled with stories that mattered. Aria sat by the window, legs curled beneath her on a folded blanket. She reached for the books like they were precious things, tracing their spines with reverence. "I forgot how much I missed reading," she murmured, more to herself than to him. "You can take anything you want from my shelf," he said, dropping onto the cot. "Even the ones with coffee stains." She smirked. "That's generous. I'm known for my radical generosity. And my unmatched ability to alphabetize non-fiction." She laughed then, a real one. Soft. Light. Uncontrolled. The kind of laugh that slips out before you have time to guard it. He watched her with something like awe. She looked different in the sunlight. Less afraid. Her features were still tired, still guarded, but she moved with more ease now. As if her bones had finally started to settle again after years of standing too straight. She turned the page of a thick paperback, then looked up at him. "How did you end up in a library?" Noah leaned back and crossed his arms behind his head. "My mom used to take me every Saturday. We didn't have much, but the library was free. She said it was the one place in the world where I could be anyone." "What happened to her?" Aria asked quietly. "She passed away when I was 16. Lung condition. Came fast, left faster." He paused, then gestured toward the small photo frame near the heater. "That's her. Eleanor Wynne." Aria stood and walked over to the shelf. She picked up the photo and studied it closely. A woman with bright eyes and a crooked grin stood behind a bookstore counter, laughing at something just out of frame. "She looks kind," she said. She was. Kind. Stubborn. Better than the life she got. Aria held the photo longer than necessary. When she set it down, her hand lingered on the frame. Noah turned to her, concern flickering across his brow. "You okay?" But she was already turning away, hand to her mouth, breath catching. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I just..." Noah stood but didn't come closer. He let her speak, if she wanted. "I don't cry," she said, her voice trembling. "I've trained myself not to. Because if you cry, they know they've won. But right now..." Her shoulders shook. He didn't touch her. Instead, he knelt beside the blanket and handed her a tissue. She took it with a soft, broken thank you. They sat in silence again, this time not easy, but necessary. She cried the way someone cries when the weight finally slides off their spine, not dramatically, just quietly, like grief exhaling through the cracks. When her breath steadied, she looked at him again. Her eyes were red, but no longer hollow. "Thank you," she repeated. For what? For not asking me things I can't answer yet. He smiled. Sometimes people don't need answers. They just need space. Later that night, rain returned, lighter this time, more of a mist than a storm. Aria stood at the back entrance of the laundromat, watching the wet street shimmer beneath the streetlights. Noah appeared beside her, 2 mugs of tea in hand. He offered her one. Chamomile. My mom's go-to. She sipped and sighed. You're kind. He chuckled. I'm just tired and awkward. No, she said, turning to face him. You're kind. And not the kind that expects something back. She looked at him like she was seeing something rare. You're the first person who hasn't asked me where I'm from, she said quietly. Noah turned to her slowly. Because I figured you'd tell me when you were ready. Aria blinked fast. And just like that, something shifted again, small, but powerful. A little trust added to the foundation beneath them. I used to think freedom was being anywhere but home, she said. Now I think maybe it's just being somewhere you don't have to explain yourself. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. You don't owe anyone an explanation. The rain drizzled like music. The lights hummed in soft yellow. And there, under the quiet mist and a chipped awning, they both let themselves breathe. The next week passed in slow, precious minutes. Aria settled into the small rhythms of Noah's life, waking to the soft creak of his apartment above the laundromat, sharing breakfast at the tiny fold-out table, sorting his books into chaotic but charming stacks, and sneaking across the street to the public archive, where Noah sometimes let her help with returns. No one there asked questions. They assumed she was a volunteer, or maybe a new assistant. She liked it that way. Here, she could breathe. Here, she was just Aria. Not a name on glossy magazines. Not the future bride of a man she didn't love. Not the daughter of one of the richest families in the country. Just a girl with tangled hair and borrowed sweaters and ink on her fingertips from helping label ancient maps. Noah never pressed her. He told stories in the way people do when they're trying to make space, not take it. Little fragments about books he loved as a kid, about his part-time job teaching GED classes at the community center, about the way the old library smelled like warm dust and vanilla when it rained. She listened like it was the most important thing in the world. But even in this quiet pocket of peace, something dark lingered in the edges of Aria's mind. A countdown. A clock. Because somewhere out there, they were still looking for her. And sooner or later, someone would see. It happened on a Thursday. Noah had left early for a meeting with the city archive board, and Aria, hoodie pulled low over her forehead, made her way to the market a few blocks over. She carried a canvas tote Noah had given her, one of those ones with a cartoon cat and a quote about libraries. The sky was finally clear, a rare gift in Rose Lake. She told herself the sunshine was a good omen. That she could do this. Buy eggs, maybe oranges. Something to surprise Noah with. Something ordinary. She moved quickly, head down, scanning the shelves of the corner grocer. And then, she saw it. It wasn't a sound or a voice. It was her face. Plastered on the front of a tabloid at the checkout counter, just above a garish headline. Heiress missing, Aria Valentine disappears days before wedding. The photo was old, her in a silver gown at a gala, smiling tightly beside a man she hadn't spoken to since. But it was unmistakable. She froze. Behind her, a woman in line squinted at the magazine, then at Aria. Their eyes locked. The woman's brows pulled together, her mouth starting to form a question. Aria dropped the basket. And ran. She didn't stop until she was halfway down the alley behind the laundromat. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps. Her hands shook so badly she couldn't unlock the door. She pounded against it once, then twice before it finally gave way. She burst inside, collapsing to her knees, the canvas tote sliding across the floor. They knew. Someone had seen. It was only a matter of time now. She was going to lose everything. And she couldn't let Noah be caught in it. By the time Noah returned that evening, Aria had packed half her things, what little she had. A few books. A hoodie. The teas she liked. On the counter sat a stack of library novels, neatly arranged, and beside them, a folded note she hadn't been able to finish. He stepped inside quietly, his keys jingling once before going still in his hand. She stood at the window, clutching the strap of her duffel bag like it was the only thing tethering her to the floor. He didn't say anything at first. Just stood there, watching her. "Where are you going?" he asked gently. She didn't turn. "I have to go." "Why?" "I can't explain." "Try." She turned then, tears clinging to her lashes. "Because they're looking for me. Because I don't belong here. Because I'm not who you think I am." Noah's face didn't change. But his eyes did, something flickered there. A quiet bracing. Aria stepped forward. "My name isn't just Aria. It's Aria Valentine. My father is Philip Valentine. Valentine Ventures, the real estate empire, the political lobbying machine, the whole machine." Noah blinked slowly. He had suspected something, sure. But not this. Not that name. She laughed bitterly. "I was supposed to be married off next week. A business merger disguised as a wedding. Contracts and champagne. All signed, sealed, and stuffed into a white dress." She looked down. Her voice softened. "I didn't want any of it. I ran. And then I found you." Noah stepped closer, cautious. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I was scared," she whispered. "Because you were kind before you knew. You didn't treat me like property or opportunity. You didn't look at me like I was a name. Just me." Her voice cracked. "And now that you know." He stopped her. "Knowing doesn't change who you've been here," he said. "It doesn't erase how you helped that old man catalog his coin collection at the library, or how you folded every towel in this place because you said chaos gives you headaches." She laughed through her tears. "I'm not angry," he added. "I'm just afraid." "Afraid of what?" "That one day, you'll go back to that world. And there won't be space for someone like me." She took a step closer, her hands trembling. "I don't want to go back." Noah looked at her. Really looked. At the girl in a hoodie too big for her, with tea-stained fingers and tears on her cheeks. He reached for her hand. "Then don't." She collapsed into him, arms around his neck, face buried in his shoulder. And in that small apartment, surrounded by books and dust and a soft humming heater, they stood quietly. No longer strangers. Not quite certain of what came next. But, for the first time, undeniably together. The air in the room was thick with decision. The plan had been simple: leave at dawn. Take the first train north. Noah had a friend with a cabin in a quiet lakeside town. No cell service, no headlines, no legacy. Just stillness and pine trees and time to breathe. Aria had barely slept. She stood by the window in one of Noah's worn flannels, watching the rain mist against the glass. Her duffel sat packed by the door, books and a few borrowed shirts tucked between socks and toothpaste. No jewelry. No silk. She had left that version of herself behind. At least, she thought she had. Noah returned from the library just past 5 a.m., his jacket damp, a bag of pastries in hand. He smiled, soft and sleepy, when he saw her. "You ready?" he asked. She nodded, but her grip tightened on the bag strap. And then came the sound that shattered everything. Tires. Slick pavement. A sharp screech outside. They turned just in time to see a black SUV slide to a stop at the curb. The doors flew open. Suits poured out, 4 men, maybe 5. Faces she recognized. Faces she'd grown up fearing. Her father's security team. "No," she breathed. "Run," Noah said, already moving. They burst through the back door and into the alley, sprinting through the gray drizzle. Aria's heart pounded louder than the footsteps behind them. They cut through the bakery loading dock, past dumpsters and down slick cobblestone paths. Her lungs burned. Behind them, voices shouted. Commands barked. One of the men gained on them. Another closed in from the side. "Go through the fence," Noah yelled, pointing ahead. Aria slipped through the gap in the chain link. Noah was steps behind, but then... a blow. A crack. The sound of bone meeting brick. "Noah!" She screamed. He had been grabbed, shoved hard into the alley wall. His head hit the stone with a sickening thud, and he collapsed to the ground, motionless. She tried to reach him, but arms wrapped around her from behind. She kicked, screamed, thrashed, but it was no use. They dragged her back to the SUV. She caught one last glimpse of him, crumpled in the rain, blood mixing with puddles, and then the door slammed shut. And he was gone. The Valentine estate was even colder than she remembered. The walls glistened with marble. The chandeliers sparkled. The staff moved in practiced silence. They stripped her of everything, her hoodie, her bracelet, even the little copy of Jane Eyre she had been carrying in her duffel. Back to silk. Back to lace. Back to a gilded cage. Her mother visited once, smoothing down Aria's hair with a manicured hand. "You will marry Andrew, and you will smile," she said flatly. "This family is finished with scandal." Aria didn't answer. She didn't ask about Noah. She didn't ask if he was alive. She knew they wouldn't tell her. The wedding was set for 3 days later. A floral designer came. A dress tailor. A PR team. She stood still through it all, A mannequin in a dream someone else had written. Each night, she sat by her window in silence, staring into the clipped garden. Remembering his hands. His voice. The scent of his coat. She imagined his body still lying in that alley. Imagined she had killed the one person who had shown her what love really looked like. And when the wedding morning arrived, when they laced her into ivory silk and pinned diamonds in her hair, she didn't cry. She just stopped hoping. The ballroom was drenched in gold. Crystal chandeliers. Dozens of cameras. Rows of industry giants in black suits and polished heels. She walked down the aisle like a ghost, arm in arm with her father, her heart barely beating. Andrew Whitmore waited at the altar, smug in a perfectly tailored tux. The officiant began to speak. She barely heard him. If anyone objects. Silence. Then. A crash. The back doors slammed open. Gasps. Whispers. Phones lifted. And then, there he was. Noah. Soaked. Bruised. Eyes blazing. Alive. Her breath caught. And she ran. The ballroom stilled, frozen like the final moment of a dream about to shatter. Aria stood at the altar, her fingers still trembling from the impact of her world flipping upside down. The officiant's words hung unfinished. The cameras, which had been trained on the union of two empires, now turned, zooming in on the soaked, disheveled figure at the entrance. Noah Wynn. His hair was slicked to his forehead, his lip split, a bruise blooming over one cheekbone. Rainwater dripped from his jacket onto the marble floor. He should have looked out of place. But somehow, he was the only real thing in the room. Her voice broke before her mind could stop it. Noah. Andrew turned, rage tightening his jaw. Security. He barked. Noah didn't flinch. His eyes never left Aria. I'm sorry, he said, his voice cracking through the silence. I didn't come here to ruin anything. I came because I love you. Gasps rippled. The PR team froze, their coordinated smiles faltering. I know I don't belong here, Noah continued, stepping forward slowly. I'm not wearing a six-figure suit. I can't offer you a life of yachts and diamonds. But I can offer honesty. Safety. Choice. And I think that's what you wanted the moment you ran into that alley. Aria's chest rose and fell rapidly. Her entire body buzzed like her soul had just returned to her. Andrew looked to her now, voice laced with warning. You walk out that door, Aria, and you walk away from everything. Your inheritance. Your name. Your family. She turned to him. I've already walked away from myself. I won't do it again. The words weren't loud. But they were clear. The crowd shifted, murmured. Her mother stood in the front row, lips parted, as if waiting for the moment her daughter would snap back into obedience. But Aria turned to Noah. She stepped down from the altar, lifting the hem of her gown, heels clacking softly on the marble floor. The veil slipped from her shoulders, forgotten. And in front of everyone, she walked straight into his arms. He held her like a lifeline, like they both remembered what it felt like to lose each other. The ballroom burst into chaos. Shouted questions. Flashing lights. But all she could hear was his breath, fast and shaky. I thought you were, she began. I'm here, he whispered, holding her tighter. I told you I'd find you. Then they turned. Together. They walked back down the aisle, not in ceremony, but in choice. Out through the grand golden doors. Into the rain. And into freedom. Months passed. The headlines exploded, of course. Heiress rejects empire for library worker and wedding day walkout. Pundits spun it. The family went silent. Lawyers panicked. Brands tried to capitalize on it. But Aria, now Aria Wynn, officially, didn't answer to any of it. She and Noah had disappeared into the kind of life that didn't make the papers. The lakeside town of Willow Glen welcomed them like a secret held close to the chest. There were no limousines, no champagne galas. Just early morning fog, pine trees, and silence broken only by birdsong. They lived in a small, sun-filled cabin borrowed from Noah's old friend. Aria planted herbs in mismatched pots. Noah taught part-time at the community school. They worked together to reopen a tiny, dust-covered bookshop near the town square, renamed the Hollow Shelf, where locals could read, rest, and talk without judgment. And when the first leaves turned gold, Aria stood behind the counter, running her fingers over the spine of a weathered copy of Jane Eyre, and whispered, I've never felt more myself than I do now. Noah kissed her forehead and said, That's all I ever wanted for you. One quiet winter morning, as snow tapped gently against the windows, Aria sat at the kitchen table sorting a stack of envelopes. She paused when she opened a cream-colored one, her fingers going still. A letter from her father. She stared at it for a long moment. Then she opened it. Inside was no threat, no demand. Just a single page. A note in her father's familiar, tightly controlled script. "You are your mother's fire. You were always going to set your own path. I just didn't know how to let go. I see that now. You chose love, not convenience. I don't understand it. But I respect it. I hope one day, you'll let me meet the man you gave it all up for." Aria read the letter twice. Then set it down and stared out at the snow-covered trees. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. But something inside her, something heavy, loosened its grip. 2 years later, the hollow shelf had become a local gem. Kids ran in after school for hot cocoa and free bookmarks. Elderly couples browsed the used poetry shelf. Aria led a women's book circle on Tuesdays, and Noah hosted game nights for reluctant teen readers on Fridays. They lived simply. Laughed often. Loved without pretense. On their 3rd anniversary, Noah took Aria to the edge of Willow Lake, where the water stilled like glass and the world felt wide enough to hold all the versions of themselves they had once been. He handed her a small velvet box. No speeches. No cameras. Just a boy who loved a girl brave enough to run. Inside was a ring made from silver and sea glass. "I know you hate diamonds," he said, sheepish. She didn't answer. She just kissed him. Then nodded. At the back of the bookshop, a photo sat in a wooden frame. Faded, humble. Just 2 people, drenched in rain, holding hands as they ran through an alley. Beneath it, a quote. "Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose something ordinary, and love it with your whole heart." The end, a story of escape, courage, and love that chose simplicity over legacy. Aria didn't just flee a wedding. She ran toward a life that let her be herself. And Noah didn't rescue her. He saw her, truly, and chose to stay. Because real love doesn't glitter. It glows quietly. And sometimes, the greatest happily ever afters begin the moment you stop running from the storm and walk through it.